Yo guys, welcome to the Widemouth podcast. Today we're doing volume 2 of Creepypasta Stories. The last episode didn't do as good as I was hoping. So depending on how this one does, we may or may not continue the series. So if you guys do enjoy this, make sure you give it listens and make sure you follow the podcast on Spotify and wherever else, wherever you listen to your podcast, wherever you're currently listening to this episode, make sure you drop it a like, drop it 5 stars, leave comments down below. Make sure you follow the podcast wherever you are. Follow it on Spotify. Mainly, that's where we prefer our listeners to go, is to Spotify. But if you're not on Spotify and you're listening somewhere else, we love you as well. I'm obviously, since this is a Creepypasta episode, I am solo today, so don't worry. None of the rats are in this episode. You don't have to deal with fucking Nicholas and Kumi today. They'll be back in the next one, which, by the way, episode 35. Episode 35 is going to be a massive episode. It's going to be the first video podcast. So that should be pretty cool. And we have Google Docs of everything we're going to do in the episode. And episode 35 is like, so far, it's like a full page of things that we're going to be going over so far. So, we're recording it here in a couple days. So, and the list could get bigger. So stay tuned for that episode, guys. That one's going to be a fucking banger. If you do want to see the video version of that will only be on Spotify. So just a little heads up for episode 35, the next episode, if you didn't know. But yeah, next episode is going to be video only on Spotify. But so yeah, we're reading Creepypastas today, volume 2. I recently, it's more of like the last couple of months I've really gotten into creepypastas and wanting to pretty much do them like this in a like, I guess, in a content way, to read some stories. And obviously a lot of people have done this in the past, so it's a little I'm a little late to the party. But there's this other podcast that I listen to that does this occasionally. They've done it like I think like 4 times, 2, 3, 4 times. They've done it over the course of a couple of years. So I thought, you know what, I would like to do this. Obviously, I've done it a lot more frequently than them. But like I said, this will be the last episode, probably for this season. This will be the last time we do this, unless this episode does really well. If this episode does better than the last one, then I'll do this again. So that's, if volume 3 pops up, you know that this episode did better than the last. So I got 4 stories for you guys. So today we're going to be going over, I'm going to be reading you, I should say, Eyeless Jack, Licking, Mr. Widemouth, and then if we have enough time for it, I want to read you a 4th story called The Russian Sleep Experiment. So depending how these next 3 go, we might do that. And more than likely, we probably will end up doing all 4. We'll see what happens at the end, because 4 stories is quite a lot for one episode, especially when you're just by yourself. Maybe if we do a volume 3, we can have one of the boys with us to do it with us, so we can go over the story. That might be a nice addition. But we'll see what happens for volume 3. But anyway, boys, let's get right into this. The first story, obviously, is going to be Eyeless Jack. Let's get right into it. Hello, my name is Mitch. I'm here to tell you guys about an experience I had. I don't know if it was paranormal or whatever stupid words people use to describe supernatural phenomena, but after that thing visited me, I believe in that paranormal trash now. A week after I moved in with my brother Edwin, after my house was foreclosed, I finished unpacking. Edwin liked the idea of me moving in since we hadn't seen each other for about 10 years. So I was excited too. I soon fell asleep after I moved in. After that first week, I heard rustling noises coming from outside at about 1 in the morning. I thought it was a raccoon, so I ignored it and I tried to fall asleep. The next morning, I told Edwin about it, and he agreed. The next night, however, I thought I heard my window opening and a loud thump, as if something entered my room. I darted up and looked around my room, but I saw nothing. The next morning, Edwin dropped his coffee cup when he saw me. He held up a nearby mirror and I saw myself. I had a large gash in my left cheek. After I was rushed to the hospital, my doctor told me that I must have been sleepwalking, but then he showed me something that made my blood turn cold. He lifted up my shirt to reveal a sewn-up incision where my kidneys were. I stared into his eyes, mine widening. You somehow lost your left kidney last night, my doctor told me. We don't know how, though. Sorry, Mitch. The next night was my breaking point. Around midnight, I woke up to see a truly terrifying sight. I was staring face to face with a creature with a black hoodie, in a dark blue mask with no nose or mouth, staring down at me. The thing that scared me the most was that it had no eyes, just empty, black sockets. The creature also had some black substance dripping from its sockets. I grabbed a camera from a nearby mantle and took a picture. Immediately taking that shot, the creature lunged at me, tried to claw up my chest to take my lungs. I stopped it by kicking it in the face. As I ran out of my room to grab my wallet. I would need the money. I ran out of my brother's house into the night. I eventually ended up in the woods near Edwin's house and tripped on a rock. I fell unconscious and woke up in the hospital. My doctor, the same one who treated me before, entered the room. "I have good news and bad news, Mitch," my doctor stated. "The good news is that you had minor injuries and your parents are going to pick you up." I sighed with relief. "The bad news is that your brother has been killed by something." "Sorry." My parents took me to Edwin's house to collect my remaining belongings, which I did. Upon entering my room, I was scared, but remained calm. I grabbed my camera and then stopped dead in my tracks. In the hallway leading to my room, I saw Edwin's body, something small lying next to it. I retrieved it up and entered my parents' car, not mentioning Edwin's corpse. I looked at that thing I'd picked up and nearly vomited. I was holding my stolen, half-eaten kidney with some black substance on it. Alright, boys, that was Eyeless Jack. So I think another thing I want to do for these episodes is kind of do a quick little recap. My quick recap of that story is that it was complete fucking dog shit. There's some stuff in there. You know, some of the sentences are worded terribly. So I kind of had to reword it as I was going. So some of that might have sounded a little different than the actual writing. Like where was one of the sentences like, "I retrieved my wallet. I would need the money." So random. You just didn't need to type that out into the story. That is just so irrelevant to everything. Yeah, right here. "As I ran out of my room, I grabbed my wallet. I would need the money." Like what? You could have just not said that and it would have made no difference to the story. Just a bunch of random stuff. And the doctor is just so casual about talking to him. It is fucking insane. But yeah. So I guess we can give a rating. I give this as an overall rating as a story. It has potential to have been really good. It is a classic of creepypasta, I believe. It's one of the OGs, I guess you could say. I think it's all right. I mean, if it was worded better, maybe like a remake of this story could happen. I think it has potential to be a really good one. It could be a really good video, I think, if it was turned into like a video. If anyone's done that, I don't know. If it has, make sure you drop it down below. Maybe someone has. I don't have no idea. But yeah. Anyway, let's go on to the next one. Alright, guys, so this next story is called Licking. I think this is... I know this story because it's been told to me as like a... It's like a little urban legend kind of a deal as well as a creepypasta. It's a really short story. This one's called Licking. So, yeah, you probably already know the story. You'll probably... If you don't remember the story, you'll probably quickly realize what story it is as we go through it. It's very short. It's just 2 minutes. So, let's get right into it. My great-grandmother lived alone up in the mountains at her cabin. Her husband was dead, so she was there all alone. She only had one companion, and that was her loving dog. They both adored each other, and the dog was a great comfort to her. Every night when she went to bed, the dog would lick her hand to let her know that he was there to protect her. One night, she had gone to bed, and the dog had licked her hand like he had done routinely every night since her husband died. But this night was different. She had woken up in the middle of the night because she heard her dog whimpering. She wanted to comfort him and let her know that she was there for him. So she stuck her hand out by the bed and she felt the dog gently lick her hand like always. She figured he was just cold, so she went back to sleep. The dog's whimpering had woken her up a second time, so she stuck her hand out, the dog licked it, and she went back to bed. This happened a third time, and she stuck her hand out, and the dog stopped whimpering and came and licked her hand. She stayed awake for a few moments afterward, and she went back to sleep. In the morning, she woke up and stuck her hand out by the bed, but nothing licked her hand. She thought that the dog had already awakened and was just in the front room. She rolled over and got out of bed and heard a drip, 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 drip. She thought the sound was coming from the kitchen, so she walked over and turned the handles on the sink faucet, but it wasn't the source of the noise. After frustratingly checking the sink and its pipes, she gave up and continued into her bathroom to take a shower. As she got closer to the bathroom door, it was evident that the sound was coming from within. She opened the door, looked above the bathtub, and gasped in utter horror. There, Hanging from the light by his collar was her loving companion. His blood was dripping into the bathtub. She screamed and began to cry, wiping her eyes and sobbing. She turned and looked into the mirror. In the mirror, she saw the dog's reflection, and written on the mirror, in her dog's blood, with drips and streaks hanging down from each other, were the words, "Humans can lick too." So, yeah, guys, that was Licking. I guess I should say the artist names as well, or the author. I have to find it in here somewhere. I have no idea. Where is it? Who wrote this one? Oh, it's anonymous. So some rando wrote this one back in the day. This one's from 2010, which sounds about around the time that I would have heard it. I heard this one as a like a like a young little teenage girl is home alone while her parents are like out on a date or something, and it's her dog is comforting her because she's like scared or something. But it's a similar thing, but it's like the little girl then finds the dog when the parents actually come home later that night. She like hears the faucet and all that shit as well. But then yeah, it's pretty much the same story, just a different group of people. This is a really good one. This one on Creepypasta has a 7.97 out of 10 out of 351 votes. So this is a really good one. It's fucking creepy as fuck as well. This one really gets your fucking jimmies going. So just the idea of being in this situation is awful because I feel like a dog tongue and a human tongue are a very different feeling. But hey, when you're not really expecting it to be a human, then I guess it doesn't really make any difference. But yeah, I feel like if you put like a dog on your left hand and a human on the right, you could probably tell the difference. Like if you didn't know which one was which. But if you're not expecting it, then I guess, yeah, the story's fucked. But so far, that's my favorite one. Much better than the last one. So yeah, let's go on to the next one. Alright guys, so let's get right into this story. Mr. Widemouth. During my childhood, my family was like a drop of water in a vast river, never remaining in one location for long. We settled in Rhode Island when I was 8, and there remained until I went to college in Colorado Springs. Most of my memories are rooted in Rhode Island, but there are fragments in the attic of my brain which belong to various homes we had lived in when I was much younger. Most of these memories are unclear and pointless. Chasing after another boy in the backyard of a house in North Carolina, trying to build a raft to float on the creek behind the apartment we rented in Pennsylvania, and so on. But there is one set of memories which remains as clear as glass. As thought, they were just made yesterday. I often wonder whether these memories are simply lucid dreams produced by the long sickness I experienced that spring. But in my heart, I know they are real. We were living in a house just outside the bustling metro of New Vineyard, Maine. Population was 643. It was a large structure, especially for a family of 3. There were a number of rooms that I didn't see in the 5 months we resided there. In some ways, it was a waste of space, but it was the only house on the market at the time. At least within an hour's commute to my father's place of work. The day after my 5th birthday, attended by my parents alone, I came down with a fever. The doctor said I had mononucleosis, which meant no rough play and more fever for at least another 3 weeks. It was horrible timing to be bedridden. We were in the process of packing our things to move to Pennsylvania, and most of my things were already packed in my boxes, leaving my room barren. My mother brought me ginger ale and books several times a day, and these served the function of being my primary form of entertainment for the next few weeks. Boredom always loomed just around the corner, awaiting to rear its ugly head and compound my misery. I don't exactly recall how I met Mr. Widemouth. I think it was just about a week after I was diagnosed with mono. My first memory of the small creature was asking him if I had a name. He told me to call him Mr. Widemouth because his mouth was large. In fact, everything about him was large in comparison to his body. His head, his eyes, his crooked ears, but his mouth was by far the largest. "You look kind of like a Furby," I said as he flipped through one of my books. Mr. Widemouth stopped and gave me a puzzle book. "Furby? What's a Furby?" he asked. I shrugged. "You know, the toy. The little robot with big ears. You can pet and feed him, almost like a real pet." "Oh," Mr. Widemouth resumed his activity. "You don't need one of those. They aren't the same as having a real friend." I remember Mr. Widemouth disappearing every time my mother stopped by to check in on me. "I lay under the bed," he later explained. "I don't want your parents to see me because I'm afraid they won't let us play anymore." We didn't do much during these first few days. Mr. Widemouth just looked at my books, fascinated by the stories and pictures they contained. The third and fourth morning after I met him, he greeted me with a large smile on his face. "I have a new game we can play," he said. "We have to wait until your mother comes to check on you, because they can't see us play it. It's a secret game." After my mother delivered more books and soda at the usual time, Mr. Widemouth slipped out from under the bed and tugged my hand. "We have to go to the room at the end of this hallway," he said. I objected at first, as my parents had forbidden me to leave my bed without their permission. But Mr. Widemouth persisted until I gave in. The room in question had no furniture or wallpaper. Its only distinguishing feature was a window opposite the doorway. Mr. Widemouth darted across the room and gave the window a firm push, flinging it open. He then beckoned me to look at the ground below. We were on the second story of the house, but it was on a hill, and from this angle, the drop was farther than 2 stories due to the incline. "I like to play pretend up here," Mr. Widemouth explained. "I pretend that there is a big soft trampoline down below this window, and I jump. If you pretend hard enough, you bounce back up like a feather. I want you to try." I was a 5-year-old with a fever, so only a hint of skepticism darted through my thoughts as I looked down and considered the possibility. "It's a long drop," I said, "but that's all part of the fun. It would be fun if it was only a short drop. If it weren't that way, you may as well just bounce on a real trampoline." I toyed with the idea, picturing myself falling through thin air only to bounce back to the window or something, unseen by human eyes. But the realist in me prevailed. "Maybe some other time," I said. "I don't know if I have enough imagination. I could get hurt." Mr. Widemouth's face contorted into a snarl, but only for a moment. Anger gave way to disappointment. "If you say so," he said. He spent the rest of the day under my bed, quiet as a mouse. The following morning, Mr. Widemouth arrived holding a small box. "I want to teach you how to juggle," he said. "Here are some things you can use to practice before I start giving you lessons." I looked in that box. It was full of knives. "My parents will kill me," I shouted, horrified that Mr. Widemouth had brought knives into my room, objects that my parents would never allow me to touch. "I'll be spanked and grounded for a year." Mr. Widemouth frowned. "It's fun to juggle with these. I want you to try it." I pushed the box away. "I can't. I'll get in trouble. Knives aren't safe to just throw in the air." Mr. Widemouth frown deepened into a scowl. He took the box of knives and slid under my bed, remaining there for the rest of the day. I began to wonder how often he was under me. I started having trouble sleeping after that. Mr. Widemouth often woke me up at night, saying he had put real trampoline under the window, a big one, that I couldn't see in the dark. I always declined and tried to go back to sleep, but Mr. Widemouth persisted. Sometimes he stayed by my side until early in the morning, encouraging me to jump. It wasn't so fun to play with anymore. My mother came to me one morning and told me I had her permission to walk around outside. She thought the fresh air would be good for me, especially after being confined to my room for so long. Ecstatic, I put on my sneakers and trotted out the back porch, yearning for feeling of the sun on my face. Mr. Widemouth was waiting for me. "I have something I want you to see," he said. I must have given him a weird look because then he said, "It's safe. I promise." I followed him to the beginning of a deer trail which ran through the woods behind the house. "This is an important path," he explained. "I've had a lot of friends about your age. When they were ready, I took them down this path to a special place. You aren't ready yet, but one day, I hope to take you there." I returned to the house, wondering what kind of place lay beyond that trail. 2 weeks after I met Mr. Widemouth, the last load of our things had been packed into a moving truck. I would be in the cab of the truck sitting next to my father for the long drive to Pennsylvania. I considered telling Mr. Widemouth that I would be leaving, but even at 5 years old, I was beginning to suspect that perhaps the creature's intentions were not to my benefit, despite what he had said otherwise. For this reason, I decided to keep my departure a secret. My father and I were in the truck at 4 a.m. He was hoping to make it to Pennsylvania by lunchtime tomorrow with the help of an endless supply of coffee and 6-pack of energy drinks. He seemed like more of a man who was about to run a marathon than who was about to spend 2 days sitting still. "Early enough for you?" he asked. I nodded and placed my head against the window, hoping for some sleep before the sun came up. I felt my father's hand on my shoulder. "This is the last move, son. I promise. I know it's hard for you, as sick as you've been. Once Daddy gets promoted, we can settle down and you can make friends." I opened my eyes as we backed out of the driveway. I saw Mr. Widemouth's silhouette in the bedroom window. He stood motionless until the truck was about to turn onto the main road. He gave a pitiful little wave goodbye, steak knife in hand. I didn't wave back. Years later, I returned to New Vineyard. The piece of land our house stood upon was empty, except for the foundation, as the house burned down a few years after my family left. Out of curiosity, I followed the deer trail that Mr. Widemouth had shown me. Part of me expected him to jump out from behind the tree and scare the little bejesus out of me. but I felt that Mr. Widemouth was gone, somehow tied to the house that no longer existed. The trail entered at New Vineyard Memorial Cemetery. I noticed that many of the tombstones belonged to children. Alright guys, that was Mr. Widemouth. So if you didn't understand the ending, it's basically Mr. Widemouth was trying to get the kid to kill himself essentially throughout the entire story, and that eventually he would end up in that cemetery with all the other children that Mr. Widemouth has killed. So those were like because Mr. Widemouth said he had friends and shit. That's where that trail ended, was at a cemetery for children, essentially. Well, most of the cemetery was children. So yeah. So he was just trying to get the kid to kill himself, and the kid just was having none of it. So yeah, that was a really good one as well. Definitely longer than 6 fucking minutes though, I'll tell you that. So yeah. That was a decent one. I liked that one a lot actually. Which makes me not want to read this one actually. Kind of want to save this one. I think we should do a big, if assuming the volume 3 does eventually come out, I think I want to save a bunch of big stories, because the Russian sleep experiment, I'm pretty sure, is a real story. So I kind of want to get maybe 2 other real stories and put together into a big episode about real stories. So I think I am going to save this one. So we'll save it for that, because that sounds like that would be a banger. And this one's a long one. This is a 16-minute story. So it would take a while to get through that one. Oh, estimated rating is 12 minutes. It's still a long one. It'd be longer than all the other stories combined, technically. So yeah, we're gonna save this one for next time. So the Russian sleep experiment, expect that one for next time. Or if you just want to go and read it, you can. It's an old story from 2012. So, but I'm pretty sure it's a real thing, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe not. But yeah, I'll get 2 other big stories in the next episode if this one does well, like I said. But yeah, hope you guys did enjoy those episodes. So we went over Eyeless Jack, Licking, and Mr. Widemouth. So give a vote down on the poll. There'll be a poll on the Spotify version of this with which story, sorry, that you liked the most between Eyeless Jack, Licking, and Mr. Widemouth. Me personally, I'm probably gonna go with Licking, just because that one that one just sticks out in my memory the most out of all of them. Mr. Widemouth is really good as well. Eyeless Jack was complete horseshit. Like I said, the writing was just not great. If they did like a big 2024 remaster of the fucking writing, then maybe it would be better. But yeah, let me know down the poll which one you guys liked. Anyway, boys, hope you did enjoy the episode. Make sure you drop a 5 stars on Spotify. Wherever you are listening to this, make sure you like and subscribe to all of our YouTube channels. Or just me and Kumi, really. But so I should say this as well. Me and Kumi both stream on Twitch. So does Nicholas. We all stream on Twitch. My Twitch obviously is ImNexusss. That's ImNexusss. Kumi is KOOLME. Then 666 at the end, because he's a demon worshiper. And then Nicholas's is Baby Upsilon. So that's baby, the word baby, and then UPILSON. So feel free to go follow us on Twitch and YouTube. We do all of that stuff as well. If you want to see more content, follow us on Twitter. But most importantly, rate this episode 5 stars on Spotify. And ladies and gentlemen, I will see you guys in the next episode. Episode 35, the big banger video podcast, coming at you in the next one. I'll see you guys on Friday with that banger. But until then, I'll see you all later. Have a good one.